Hello and welcome to VMware Lab. My name is Mahar Al-Asfar. I'm a Cloud Management Staff SE with VMware. In today's video, we're going to talk about the template building with vSphere customization, and especially working with Cloud-init. This video is really a follow-up to a recent blog post, which I will share in the description below, around finding a workaround for the vSphere customization and Cloud-init to coexist, where the VM customization gets applied, and then Cloud-init would actually execute the user data that you defined in, for example, the VRA blueprint. So in the video, we will be following a specific workflow, and what we will do is we'll start from scratch by building an Ubuntu VM. We'll be working with Bionic Beaver, which is the 18.4 LTS build, and then we will move on to set it up as a template, where we will be spending most of our time following the step-by-step template preparation steps that I outlined in the blog post. Once we do that, we will do some configuration in VRA and map the image that we just built, and then build a sample blueprint that will leverage the template while emphasizing the use of the static IP assignment that will force the vSphere customization on the VM. And then what is the workaround that we're going to be using in terms to overcome the conflicting issue between vSphere customization and the Cloud-init engine. At the end, we'll verify the deployment. We'll make sure that the IP addresses that we were leased that was leased to the VM actually coming from the static IP range and not DHCP on the network. And we want to make sure that the Cloud-init code has been actually executed. Without further ado, that's the idea of the recording today. So let's get started. All right, so we're currently in the lab today, and we'll be targeting the Montreal compute cluster here to build our Bionic Beaver image. First of all, if you actually Google how to download, you can go to the releases.ubuntu.com 18.04, and here you can scroll down to the server install image and simply download the 64-bit server install image here, which I already did for us today. So let's go ahead and simply start with building our VM first. First thing we're going to do a new virtual machine, and we will set a name for our template. And that will be our template, Ubuntu 18.04. And we'll put it on the Montreal compute cluster. Hit next. Select our storage. And we'll make it compatible with 6.7 update 2, which I have here and later. And we're going to select Linux as the guest OS family, and we'll scroll down to Ubuntu 64-bit, since the Ubuntu 18.04 LTS is a 64-bit platform. All right, here I'm gonna just do 2 and 2 gig, and then select the network that I'm going to be on as I prepare this template, or the VM before I convert it to a template. So we'll select the management that we want, and then since I've already downloaded the ISO for the Bionic Beaver build, we'll go to the NFS. I've copied it already to my NFS data store, and here it is. I can use that and map it to the CD-ROM and make sure that it's connected when I boot it up. All right, so let's see. We'll expand the the virtual machine has been created, so let's go ahead and boot it up. All right, and we'll launch the web console. This is pretty much straightforward, so I'm sure a lot of you have already probably done this, but I just felt of capturing the process. All right, so we get to the welcome menu, and we'll be selecting English, of course. So let me click inside here, English, select your keyboard, we'll select the default, hit done. Once it applies, I'm gonna say I want to install Ubuntu. I do have a DHCP service running on the network that I selected for the VM, so it automatically obtains an IP, which, as you can see in the screenshot, it's 192.168.110.100 with /24-bit subnet. So let's hit done. I'm not using a proxy, as these VMs are directly connected or has access to the internet, so I'm not going to need that. I'm not using an alternative, and I'm using the entire disk for the as we build this. I'm not using any LVM. So we'll choose the disk. There's only a 16 gig VMDK on the VM by default, and I think that's about it. So this is the file system summary. I'm just selecting again all the default for our demo, and we'll say continue so we can begin the installation process. For the name here, I'm just going to put Cloud Administrator. The server name is going to be Ubuntu 18. Username will be Cloud Admin. Password, we'll put a default password. All right, and then I'll hit tab to go to the done, and basically, and yes, we will need the OpenSSH to be able to SSH to the VM when we actually doing the following the steps to prepare the template and all the various components. So we'll do done. I am not installing any other applications, so I'm good. Again, we're going to go to done, but you can, depending on how you want to prepare the template, you can select whatever popular snaps in your server environment that you'd like to install. For us, we're skipping that. And okay, so the installation is on its way, and we'll speed up the video here, and we'll come back when it's completed. Okay, it looks like our installation is complete, so we'll hit reboot now. And we'll go back to the VM and actually remove the ISO that we mounted. So it will edit the template, and we'll change this to client device and hit OK, then go back and hit enter. Okay, so it's rebooting right now. At this point, since it has an IP address, so we will be closing the console and just simply SSHing to the VM once we acquire the IP from the DHCP server. All right, now that we have the IP, so let's copy the IP and switch to, and be able, let's see if we can SSH to the machine. Here we go. All right, so we'll log in as Cloud Admin. And all right, we'll clear the screen. The first thing we need to do is, as we follow the steps in the blog, is we'll run sudo apt get update so we can update the list of available packages. All right, that's done. Next step, we'll do sudo apt get upgrade and -y for silent installation to be able to install any new available version of these packages that we have here so we can update our template. All right, so we need to restart. Some of the services during the package upgrade needs restarting, so we will say yes. Go ahead. All right, so we can see the upgrade has been completed. The packages upgrade has been completed. So let's clear the screen. The next step is really to install Cloud-init. If you were using, like, for example, let's say Xennial build, which is the 16.04. For Ubuntu 18.4, you actually have Cloud-init pre-installed for us. So we can actually go in and look for something like Cloud-init version. And it looks like -- version. And you can see we're running Cloud-init 19.4. So we can skip, if you're installing 18.4, you know that you have Cloud-init already pre-installed for you. Awesome. Next, we will configure the OVF as our data source for Cloud-init, and to do that, we'll need to do sudo dp keyj reconfigure, and then Cloud-init. And really the reason we're doing that is because all the other data stores are just going to delay the booting if you're about to, let's say, update the template. So instead of downloading, having Cloud-init to try every single data store type that it tries to reach, we're basically limiting it just to the OVFs. As with vRealize automation, when we are using any cloud config code, we actually map the user data or the cloud config to as user data and map it to the through an ISO that we build and map to the VM that we just provisioned, which we will see later. So hit tab and press OK to save your selection, and then we should be good to go. All right, so up to the next step. After this, we need to enable the traditional guest OS customization, and this is simply by editing the etc cloud CFG file. And what we want to do here, we'll press insert and simply add this property here: disable VMware customization true. And what this will do, it will enable and tells Cloud-init that, hey, I'm using the traditional guest OS customization, not the Cloud-init customization. So we'll hit escape, :WQ bang to save the file, and we're good. Next, we will, of course, before I move to the next step, one thing you also want to make sure is that there is that the network configuration within Cloud-init is not disabled. So make sure that, for example, you don't have any file in the cloud ls, I think it is etc cloud cfg.d, and make sure that you have no files that basically, for example, 99 disable networking, where you have content that actually has the network, a property that tells Cloud-init that the network is disabled or network configuration is disabled. We do not want the network configuration to be disabled. Okay, just want to make sure we get that. Next, we will set the temp folders not to clear. So to do that, we will do sudo vi user library temp.conf. Right, and what you want to do here, hit insert, scroll all the way to this line here, and add a hash in the front of it to so the temporary directories do not clear separately. Just to we need the temporary. We can't just clear them out after the reboot. So we will save this file, and we'll move on to the next step, and that is we need to configure the OpenVMTools to start after the dbus.service. And there is a VMware knowledge base article that I put a reference to in the resources section at the end of the blog. So to do this, what we need to do is edit this file, sudo vi, and we're going to do library lib, systemd system openvmtools.service, and hit enter. And what we want to do here is we want to hit insert, scroll down all the way here under the unit group, and let's type in after equal dbus.service. If you don't do that, you're going to get a customization error. Again, there's a KB, like I mentioned, there's a KB, VMware KB that I outlined in the resources section that require us to put this in. So the VMware tools always starts after making sure that the dbus service is started and running. So we'll save this and hit and go to the next step. All right, and next we have a step to reduce the erased network interface time to 1 minute. It just happens in the Ubuntu 16.04. We don't have to do it since we're working with Ubuntu 18 here, because simply the networking.service file is not really does not really exist under the path mentioned in the blog. So we'll move on to the next section, which is where we need to create a file to in the etc cloud here. We want to create a file here to disable Cloud-init on first boot, and to do that, we'll do sudo touch the path, and the file name is going to be cloud-init.disabled. If this file exists, Cloud-init will be disabled, and it will not run on first boot, which we're doing temporarily, because later you will see that we'll actually we'll have a way to enable Cloud-init after the second reboot. Okay, so let's create this file. And if we do ls again, now we have the file right there. That's all you have to do. So this covers this step. All right, next we need to create a script. This will be our script that will be used to enable Cloud-init. So you can copy the content of the script from the blog. So what I'll do here, we'll do cat, and we'll say we'll create a script that says enabling cloud-init.sh, and we will copy the content that I have mentioned in the blog right here. That's it, and we'll say Control C, and that will create our file here. If we cat this. All right, so what we're doing here, just to take a step back here, so we're removing the file that we just created, which disabled Cloud-init, and then we're executing a Cloud-init, executing a Cloud-init command to initialize Cloud-init. Then we're sleeping for 20 seconds. And then we're doing another Cloud-init command, but for a specific module, which is the config module. And we're sleeping for 20 seconds. And then we're doing the last module, which is the final module. This is actually where the user data will be executed. The initialization command will map the user data. So we will actually show you, I'll actually show you how the user data is visible by using one of the Cloud-init query commands, and then the final will actually take that and execute it on the VM. Great, and all of this will happen in the second reboot when we, but to be able to execute the script, we need to move on to the next step and be able to configure the script that we just created to be an executable. So we will do sudo change mod here, and we will create our select our script, which we called enable Cloud-init sh, enter. If I ls, it's in green now, which means it's executable. Awesome. Moving on to the next step, and this is where we start. We create the cron job. A cron job, we were going to set it up to only run after 90 seconds of sleep at boot time or at startup. To do that, we'll do a cron tab -e, and we will select any of those editors that you want. I'm going to go with Vim, and then hit insert, scroll all the way at the end of this script, and let's type in the command where we want it at startup, which is at reboot. What I want to do, I want you to sleep for 90 seconds. And then after that, I want you to run sh, the script path, which will be home cloud admin, in this case, / prepare _ cloud init .sh, and then close bracket. Yeah. So this is the command that will run every time you boot the VM, or when we provision the VM. It's going to sleep for 90 seconds, which is going to allow the customization to happen. I have not seen it take more than a minute, maybe even less. So 90 is a good number to use, but if you feel that you need a longer time, go ahead and increase that number if you want to. But during that time, this is where when the VM first boots and it gets rebooted, it will not be enough time for the cron job to execute, and this is where Cloud-init is in a disabled state. And then the second reboot, after the VM is customized and boots up, Once we pass the 92nd, we will go and execute the script for enabling Cloud-init, which will remove the .disabled file and instantiate or initialize Cloud-init with all its modules. I hope this is clear. We'll do WQ bank to save the file, and we move on to the next step. The next step is we will create a template, a cleaning script, which I honestly found, and I've also documented the resource in the resources section. The idea of this script is to clear, do all sort of cleanups in addition to the machine ID, and also clearing the status of Cloud-init. So let's create the file. We'll do cat, and the file name is going to be, let's say, template _ cleanup.sh. And again, I'm going to go and copy the content of the template cleaning script from the blog. Again, the blog is mentioned in the description below, and I'm going to paste it in here. Here we go. All right, and at the end here, we're going to hit enter and Control C to save it. And if I ls, now I have two scripts, one that enables Cloud-init, and the other will clean up the template. So let's take a look real quick on this template. I modified it a little bit. You can see here first we add the following username, the Ubuntu, which is really the Cloud-init user that gets created when Cloud-init instantiates itself. And then the other one is our built-in Cloud admin that we created during the OS build. You can use whatever, any name that you decided to create in your own template. You can come and replace this and replace the Cloud-init with your own user. Next, we're just grabbing the Ubuntu code name, and then you'll see there's we're stopping the services for the cleanup. We're cleaning all these edit logs here. We're cleaning up all the persistent udev rules. And as you scroll down, you'll see, well, we're cleaning up the temp folders. I am not setting the host name to null in here, and I'm not removing any SSH keys. Feel free if you want to enable that. I would like to continue be able to SSH to my template if I felt that I need to update it the next time. And then we do a cleanup for the apt, which is fine. And then very important here, and this is again based on some of the resources I had access or was researching or had access to, you need to clean the machine ID. And what we do here, we truncate this etc machine ID, and we remove also the machine ID from the dbus folder, and as well as these three main things that we need to execute, three main commands that we need to execute to clean up the machine ID. Finally, in the script, we anytime before you shut down the VM and convert it to a template, remember if it happens that Cloud-init was initiated, you want to clean its status, delete the logs and any seed or cloud config code that it downloaded to the machine. Finally, we're doing the shell history, so we're clearing the history. This is all good. So we have the next step here for us is to also make this script executable. So what we'll do sudo change mode, and we'll call the script. And now I have two executable scripts, as you can see here. I'll clear the screen. These are my two scripts that I will be calling. One is that I will run before I close the VM, and the other basically will be called by the cron job that we've created earlier. Perfect. All right. Next, we want to make sure that we can switch to the user root, and I'll explain why in a second. So what we need to do here, we need to sudo vi this file etc sshd config, and you want to scroll down to permit login, hit insert, and change this. Make sure it's set to yes. I've already done it here in this machine, as you can see. Save the file. And next we need to set a password for the user root. Usually by default there's no password set. Again, I will explain in a second why I'm doing this. So what we'll do, sudo passwd root, and set a password for root. Okay, good. Now if I switch to, the reason I'm doing this is I can I need to switch to root before I move into the next step, which is executing simply the script. All right, you can always, once you execute the cleanup script, you're free to revert back those settings to whatever they was before. And the main thing here is that I've actually experienced, I was able to execute this the script using sudo on the 16.04, but when I did the same thing in the 18.4, I got issues with some of the command syntax, or I didn't have enough permissions to execute it. So this is what I'm doing, switching to root. Therefore, the next step is to basically execute or move on to the next step. All right. All right, now we're logged in as root and we can execute the script. So we have template. Let's go ahead and execute this. All right. And that is it. After that, the next step would be to shut down the virtual machine and turn it into a template. One thing I'd like to mention here is that just be aware that the cron job, if you do edit the template to change anything you want, the cron job will also run if you try to update the template, like I mentioned. So make sure if you do pass the 90 seconds, while you're doing your change, is to re-add the cloud-init.disabled file, and I basically put a note in the, after the steps, at the end of the steps. So let's go ahead and shut down the machine. All right, and if we do switch back to vCenter, we should see the VM, it's turned off. So let's right click and simply convert it to a template. Awesome. So if we switch to our templates and folders, we can see I have the 18.4 template ready to go. All right, so now that we have the template, we can go in and look at the, run the VRA 8.0. So I'm gonna launch the login page to log in. All right, we click on Cloud Assembly. The first thing I need to do, Cloud Assembly needs to detect those new images. So we'll go to the infrastructure, we'll go to the cloud accounts, and it's everything I was, the template was created on the VCS01 vCenter. So I'm gonna go here and go to the image synchronization. As you can see, the last completed synchronization was 23 hours ago. So it's not aware of the recent changes that we did, or that recent template that we've added. So let's go ahead and sync the images. Okay, now that the image synchronization completed, I can go to image mapping and create a new profile for the image. Let's call this Ubuntu 18.04. And the region I've created this in was the Montreal vCenter, where we just did the syncing, the image sync. And then if I go here, you can see these are all my templates, and I can see my Ubuntu 18.04. So I'm going to select my image and hit create. So we're good to go. Next let's go ahead and check the blueprint. So I do have already a blueprint that I've been testing with. This is the WordPress blueprint that we'll be working with, and I will open it up and look at I have 2-tier applications. This is the DB tier, and if I scroll down here, you'll see under the network, I am using the assignment. And this is just a conditional that based on the input that the user is going to do, if the input was to select the Montreal or the Ottawa cloud zone, then use the property static. If not, make it blank. If not, meaning if you're provisioning this to AWS or Azure. And that's really the power of the cloud agnostic settings that we can set here to tweak the blueprint the way we want, or to tell the placement engine where what VM and what property to use depending on where the VM is going to be deployed. So on the network side, I am using also based on the regions that I am selecting, I am using the constraint tag to make sure that I hit a specific network. So again, in summary, we are using assignment static on both web and DB. And if I go and deploy this, before we actually deploy it, notice that we need to change, you'll see that the image here setting that we have is already in the input. We only have the 1604 as an option. We don't have the 18. So let's go ahead and create this so we can actually select that when we deploy this. So I'm going to say title, and the title is the presentation layer. So this is what the user is going to say. You see, so I'm going to say Ubuntu in caps here, 18, and the actual value that I want you to pass to the property is the const here, and is actually Ubuntu 18.04. As you saw, we created that image profile. So we're good to go here. So we'll save this and hit deploy. And we'll say this is my demo deployment. And this is going to use the current draft of the blueprint. I'm going to hit next. I am going to go to the Montreal. This is where I set up the templates. And I'm using a small, and for the images in the input, now I have the Ubuntu. We misspelled that. So we'll fix that. So Ubuntu 18, and I have some requirement fields from this blueprint. I'm just doing this right now so we can save on time, and I'll hit deploy. Before two things I'm going to show you that I forgot is that the cloud config code, which will be our user data. So you can see all this under the block cloud config. This is everything. These are all the packages that cloud config or the user data will execute on the VM after Cloud-init is instantiated using our cron job that we set up. And then here is my DB, and here's its block of code. And you can see here we're installing MySQL Server, and we're running some commands to grant the user access to be able to create a database. Also, if we go to the network profiles, you see based on the constraint tags, we're actually landing on this Montreal management network. So if I actually click on it and go to the network, I'm using an existing network. If you click on the network, you'll see all this metadata that will be inherited to the VM that it's being attached to, or the VM that's connecting to this network. But more importantly, on this network, we have an IP range that a static pool IP range that this is why we set the assignment to static to actually use this address range that we set up here, which is from 110 to 11 to 231. So we want to make sure that the two VM that we provision actually lease an IP from this range, and this is what we are really after here. Okay, we'll cancel out of this. We'll make sure that our deployment is still healthy and it's going in process. It looks good so far. If we switch to the vCenter, you'll see that the first MySQL machine is already in flight here, being cloned. So we'll give it some time, and probably I'll speed up the video. All right, so the cloning has been done and the machine has been being powered on right now. So a couple of things here I want to outline is, because of the customization spec, property, we created dynamic customization spec, which will apply and invoke the customization process on the VM. At this stage, when the VM boots, you can see the network is actually in a disconnected state, and only when the customization is successful and the VM reboots, we will have a connected network card. So let's click on the web console. It is on the right network, but it's in a disconnected state. And let's see, during the boot here, of course, remember that the Cloud-init is in a disabled state, so you're not going to see any Cloud-init scripts or initialization that's happening through the post. So far, so good. Okay, and here we go. So you can see the services and the VM is being rebooted. Okay, so that went well. If we switch back to vCenter, we will see that the network card is in a connected state right now. Of course, it was less than 90 seconds, so our cron job did not execute yet because we didn't really pass the 90-second mark. And if we go back to the web for the MySQL machine, and this is after the reboot, this is now where we will pass the 90-second, where and enable Cloud-init and initialize it so it can execute the user data. So there's a couple of things that we will test to show you the state and how it actually changes. So we'll wait till we get the login screen, and you can notice here that the host name got updated. If we switch here, we see that 219, which is an IP from the static IP range, and we have a connected state, so life is good. So let's log in with Cloud Admin. And the first thing I'm going to show you here is the disabled file. So if I go to ls etc cloud, you'll see the file is still there. So Cloud-init is still disabled. Even if I do something like sudo Cloud-init status long, you'll see that Cloud-init is in disabled mode. So 90 seconds from now, we'll wait. It'll be easier just to see if the file is still there. Keep going. Here we go. So the 90-second has passed, and the file is no longer there. So if we do sudo Cloud-init status again, you can see that we are good to go. So Cloud-init has been initiated, and it's currently running. So if we keep posting here, rerunning the same command, we can see also that the ISO has been identified as the data source. So if we execute something like sudo cloud-init query user data, we should see our as you can see, we see our cloud config code that was passed from the blueprint to the VM, which is awesome. So let's go ahead and say status. You can see it's still running, so that's going to take a few times. One thing I noticed is that once the host SSH key is displayed on the console, it's an indication that the Cloud-init has completed completely. Okay, now we're executing the module, the Cloud-init module final, and this is when the actual user data is being executed right now. On this VM, so it's going to install and download MySQL Server, and then it's going to execute all the predefined commands that was mentioned in the cloud config section of the blueprint for this VM. Give it another few seconds. Here we go. That's the host key fingerprints, and this is an indication that we're done. You can see here at the bottom, status done. So if I do something like sudo MySQL on the machine, here you have it, MySQL has been installed. Actually, let me quit here. So if we execute something like sudo MySQL /user root and show databases, you can see those are the 4 databases, and because the front end has not been finished yet, so if we switch back to vCenter, we can see the WordPress machine is going through the exact same process that the first VM went through. So if we switch and bring in the web console on this VM, looks like here now it's after the first reboot. The reason I know is because it's in a connected state. The network adapter is in a connected state. Also, if you actually go to the monitor events, you will see that the customization of this VM were actually succeeded, which is what we were expecting. So the same thing here is going to happen. The hostname has been updated. Of course, again, the same thing. The IP address should be also visible once in a second now from the range that we, 220. And if I log in here real quickly and do the same set of commands that I did on the other one, and if we do ls to see if the file is still there on the etc cloud, you'll see that the file cloud-init.disabled is still there. So we're waiting for the cron job to execute and remove this file. And then, waiting for the cron job to call this, the enabling script for Cloud-init, which removes this file and instantiate or initialize Cloud-init. Here we go. So the file is gone. And if we do, let me clear the screen. If we do sudo cloud-init status -- long, we can see that the stage init, we actually caught that in time. That's the first stage where it will copy all the user data and all the Cloud-init to the machine, so it's available to us. So if we do something like sudo now cloud-init and query the user data, we should see all the cloud config code for the, and here you have it. This is at the bottom of the end of the cloud config code for the WordPress front end machine. So if we continue on, let's clear the screen and look at the status. We're in the final now, where the user data is being executed as we speak, and we'll wait for the host SSH key to populate on the console. Of course, you don't have to babysit the machine. This is just to show you the process and the step that the VM goes to, but you're guaranteed to know that your VM and your cloud config will execute and not conflict with the customization on the vSphere side. All right, so that's our key here. So if we do a status now that we see the SSH host key fingerprints, and you can see that the operation is completed from the Cloud-init point of view here, perspective. So if we switch back to the vSphere client and look at the IP address of the WordPress application and see if it's actually working. So we load the default page for Apache. So that's a good sign. And then if we try to log into my WordPress site, here you have it. So this has been great testing this out. Thank you for your time. If you lasted this long with me on the video, hopefully this is beneficial for everybody to get this to work in their environment. Please subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell notification option to get notified of any new videos I upload. Thank you very much, and see you soon.